It's time for your personal bank show with Ferenc Toth, financial literacy educator and speaker, entrepreneur, and chairman of the board of a bank in formation. Take charge of your financial future with your personal bank. Now, here's Ferenc Toth.
Welcome to the Your Personal Bank Show. And I'll tell you what, folks, I'm really excited today because we have a very special guest. And I'm going to tell you, in the show, I've been sharing how elections have consequences. And we need to become educated as voters and support candidates that agree with our beliefs on government, the economy, society, etc. And some of you are going to say, well, it's too early. But, I've recently learned that the Republican Party stays neutral and only backs the winner of the primaries. And I invited Blake Masters, candidate for U.S. Senate of Arizona, to share his views, policies, and for us to get to know him a little bit better. So I'm going to learn along with you. Blake, I just want to welcome you to the show.
Parents, thanks for having me.
Awesome. Now, I was looking a little bit of your background here. I see that you run Teal Capital, multi-billion-dollar firm, and then also you run the Teal Foundation, a nonprofit that works with promotes science and innovation. Blake has actually co-authored a best-selling book, a New York Times #1 bestseller, 0 to 1, which actually sold over 3 million copies. That's awesome.
Thank you.
And you live in Tucson, where you and your wife grew up, and you homeschool your 3 kids, I understand.
We do.
And you guys enjoy hiking in the desert.
That all is right. Someone's briefed you well.
Well, I did my research. And yes, I invited you to the show, like I stated earlier, because, folks, I just want you to know I've done some due diligence, and that's why I invited Blake. So I guess the first thing I want to ask you is, could you tell us a little about your background? I mean, who is Blake Masters?
Yeah, I grew up in Arizona, almost a native. My parents moved here when I was 4. We were in Denver, Colorado. They got sick of the snow. They took one vacation to Tucson. I think it was December of 1989. And I said, this is nice. So we became Arizonan. So I grew up here. I grew up in Tucson, went to high school there. I went to Stanford and Stanford Law School. And that's where I linked up with Peter Thiel. If you don't know Peter, he's the one Silicon Valley billionaire who I'd say is outspokenly conservative.
He's probably the only one, right?
Probably the only one.
Yeah.
At least out. I know a few, but they're sort of, hiding.
I call them closet conservatives.
Exactly. You're not allowed to be a Republican in Silicon Valley. But Peter, to his credit, is very bold. He was an instructor of mine in law school.
Ah, okay.
And so we became friends, and he sort of became a mentor figure. I started my career in Silicon Valley writing this book with Peter. The book was about startups and innovation, how to build a successful technology company, but it's also about society broadly, stagnation. Why do we have so much stagnation? Why aren't things quite working in our society? And so we wrote that book, and I've been working with him, investing in startup technology companies for the last few years. Although California,
oh yeah,
it's deteriorating and it's bad, and unfortunately, it's the progressive future. And we saw the writing on the wall a few years ago. So I moved back to Tucson late 2017. We were sort of back full time by mid 2018, and my parents are still in Tucson. My wife's parents are in Tucson. And just made sense to get back home. And then I had this front row seat to watching Arizona the Republicans lose 2 Senate seats.
Right.
Arizona was ruby red when I was a kid. And of course, both Senate seats are going to be Republican. And then, November 2018 and 2020, we lose 2 Senate seats. As soon as that second one happened, I said, no way. I can actually do this. I've been involved in politics, working with Peter behind the scenes for a number of years. But I looked around at who was likely to run and now who is running, and I said, I know Mark Kelly doesn't represent Arizona. This guy is far left progressive. He pretends to be moderate, but he's not.
Right. And
I thought I had the skills and ability to run and win, and so that's what I'm doing now.
Well, if you brought up Mark Kelly, I was going to do that later, but last I looked, I think he voted 100% with Biden policies, I believe.
Yeah, something like that. I mean, he's with Schumer, 97, 98%. It's like he hands his voting card to Bernie Sanders on day one. But then at least Bernie Sanders is honest about being a far-left radical communist, basically, right?
I've said that.
Mark Kelly votes the same way, so he's just as bad, except he's even worse because he's more dangerous because he has the audacity to pretend to be moderate.
Right.
And I find that extremely disrespectful. I think voters in 2022 will catch on.
Yeah, I don't think Arizona is New York.
That's right.
Yeah,
we certainly don't want it to become New York or California or Illinois. I mean, there's a lot of test cases here.
Exactly.
Would you rather be Florida, Texas, Arizona,
right?
Historically, or would you rather be Illinois, Would you rather be New York? Would you rather be San Francisco or Los Angeles, where they've legalized crime?
Right.
I mean, this is dystopian stuff, and it is the future of Arizona if we don't do our jobs and win next year.
That's why I've gotten more involved myself for the same reasons. I wanted to bring us back a little bit though to Teal Capital, just for a minute. What does Teal Capital do?
Family investment office. So we manage a couple $1 billion right now, and we invest in startups. Is the simplest way of describing it. We try to identify talented founders, talented entrepreneurs who are building technology. A lot of it's software, a lot of it's hardware. Increasingly, we're into biotech, right? And Nixon declared war on cancer how many years ago?
Right,
50, 60 years ago. And it feels like we've made some advances, but actually no, we're still pursuing old lines of research. And so we're the new next generation companies that are attacking cancer, that are attacking dementia in new and interesting ways. And we want to find them early and fund them because our sense is that's not really being done.
Right.
And so when we invest in a company, of course, we want it to succeed, and the world gets new technology. We make a lot of money, and that's the goal.
There you go.
Those things are pretty good.
So you say your background, I mean, like you mentioned, you're a little bit behind the scenes of the politics, but your background's really entrepreneurship.
That's right.
You're an entrepreneur.
Yep.
Yeah.
And I think we do need more entrepreneurial thinking in government. I'm not
agree.
naive. I'm not someone who just says, dadgummit, we can roll our sleeves up and run the government like a business. How many times have you heard that before?
Sure.
But it's true that that we don't have any innovation. We don't have any classic good risk-taking. Everything is CYA and bureaucratic, and I think in our government and also in our society, we're just looking at this lack of individual agency.
Right.
Whereas in the past, say what you will, like I am a small government guy, we'll talk more about that, but in the past, there was agency in the government. Like you could build the Manhattan Project, you could do the Apollo, you could build the Hoover Dam. And now it's like, well, you can't actually build anything because, do the union labor you employ, are they adequately, diverse? And what about this ecological study that shows this, I don't know, this kind of mouse is on this property, and so now you have to put it through some 10-year environment.
Right.
The bureaucracy is just becoming an excuse to not do anything.
Right.
And so everything fails.
And I've stated on the show quite often that one of our, like you said, the stagnation, the biggest problems of our government is career politicians,
right,
and career bureaucrats,
right.
Because, like you said, the government becomes all encompassing for them.
It's a giant jobs program,
right?
Big problem,
right? And like I said, we need some fresh blood, some fresh ideas, some new ideas. I completely agree with that. I also wanted to bring up a little bit on Teal Foundation. I was doing a little research on that, and I thought it was kind of interesting. Could you tell us a little bit more about what you do with that?
Teal Foundation is a 501c3 nonprofit, private foundation, but Peter and I don't like nonprofits. So there's a paradox there, but it's reconcilable. Okay. We want to be the anti-nonprofit nonprofit. Right. And so much of nonprofit giving is just fashionable. And maybe the mosquito nets in Africa do some good, but everybody's funding that stuff. Like the Bill Gates philanthropy, right?
Right.
Doesn't look that different from the Mark Zuckerberg philanthropy. Everything is conventional. It's all about pleasing the sort of center-left elites. We wanted to do philanthropy in a different way and only do things either internally as programs or externally as just giving people grants. We wanted to do things that no one else would do.
Okay.
Good causes.
For example.
So we have a program called the Teal Fellowship where we pay talented young people to drop out of college.
Okay.
We're sort of anti-college.
All right.
It shouldn't totally be shut down, but probably far too many people go to college, right? The education gets worse and worse every year.
Right.
Now it's just borderline left-wing indoctrination. The tuition is rising. It's getting so much more expensive to go to college, far outpacing inflation. And the product's getting worse. So it's a scam. And I think all the colleges lie about how good they are and what kind of world-class education your kids will get. And actually, no, it's kind of a scam. And the only thing that's rising faster than the tuition is the amount of administrators that they're hiring, right? Diversity, equity, inclusion, administration. I mean, so higher education and education, actually learning stuff is good. Schooling and especially sort of college, the machine that we've built today, are not so good. And so we started this program in 2011 to say, hey, maybe the most talented kids, at least, the brightest and most innovative and hardest working, maybe they shouldn't sit in a classroom all day.
Right.
Maybe they'd actually learn more by building a business.
Okay.
And so we pay them $100,000 to drop out of college or stop out.
For a lot of college students, that'd be great.
Yeah. Some go back, 10% go back, but they go back with renewed clarity about why they want to study something.
Okay.
And then a lot have started businesses and haven't worked, but they get some skills. They're glad to have escaped the college meat grinder, and then they go find a job.
Right.
And then a lot have started businesses that have worked really well. And I think combined net worth of all the companies that the Teal Fellows have created, there've been like maybe 160 Teal Fellows. Combined net worth of these companies is over $35 billion.
Awesome. That's excellent. I noticed something you kind of brought that up too, and you homeschool your kids.
Yeah.
And we do the same thing. I've talked about that.
Awesome.
Well, we do online school, but
but you're in charge.
Correct.
You're in charge.
Correct. My wife really oversees. She knows she knows what they're learning.
Yeah, that's awesome. That's awesome. It's important.
Yeah, and I've been sharing so often with parents and grandparents. If you work hard to spend money to get your kids, particularly like in college, high school or college, particularly to be, like you said, indoctrinated in beliefs that maybe you don't agree with, well, whose fault is that?
Right.
So.
Oh, it's heartbreaking. Imagine like having Thanksgiving dinner and your kid comes home from college and they're teaching you why you're evil and racist and why everything your grandfather fought for is horrible.
And you paid for it.
And you paid for it. It's a dunce cap. The modern diploma can be a dunce cap in disguise. Yeah. Very expensive dunce cap.
That's crazy. Awesome. Well, you've kind of brought this up a little bit already, but I'm just going to ask you directly, Blake. Why are you running for U.S. Senate?
I'm running because I think we are losing the country.
Okay.
I mean, I really, everyone always says this election is the most important election of all time.
Right.
And maybe that's been true historically, but now, 2022, I really think is a save the country election. I look at the bad governance, to put it mildly, right, that we've seen in the last 10, 11 months from the Biden administration. It's honestly gotten worse faster than I would have thought possible. And the scariest thing is I think it will get worse still if the Democrats actually take a real legislative majority, because all the Biden stuff that he's been able to do, that's been executive order stuff, right?
Pretty
Just
much.
throw open the border and all this stuff is really bad.
Right.
But if I don't do my job next year, if I don't kick out Mark Kelly from the U.S. Senate, and if they get one more Senate seat and hold the House, they're going to pack the Supreme Court.
Right.
They're going to add new states to the union to shore up control of the Senate forever. Right? They're going to federalize elections with H.R. 1. And I think if any of those things happen, the United States of America, as we know it, is gone forever. There's nothing that says that this remarkable country has to last forever. It won't if we're complacent and lazy and if we don't do the work to actually renew our institutions. And so I think this is a save the country election. I think it's going to be really hard to win, frankly. I think the Democrats know the seat is the most important Senate seat in the country.
It's pretty much recognized that as nationally.
Totally. And I look around and I think I'm running against some good guys, but I think there are more cookie cutter candidates, archetypes. There's always a military guy and a business guy, politician. So I'm something new.
We're going to talk about that a little further. And folks, I'm just going to tell you to stay tuned in this next segment. Blake's going to be with us for the rest of the show. And so I'm very excited about sharing. We're going to talk more about his policies, his ideas, his beliefs. And like I said, Your Personal Bank, we're sponsoring this as an educational public service, because I believe, too, that this is important. So stay tuned in the next segment.
For more information on Your Personal Bank, feel free to contact Ference at yourpersonalbank.com. Back to Your Personal Bank Show with Ference Toth.
Welcome back to the Your Personal Bank Show, and we have a very special guest today. We have Blake Masters. He is candidate for U.S. Senate from Arizona. And I'm going to just say, folks, if you missed the first segment, Blake shared a lot about his background and introduced himself. If you missed it, go to yourpersonalbank.com, our website. You can listen to this or any of our previously recorded shows. But again, Blake, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me. It's great to be here.
Awesome. So we were kind of starting to get into some different policy things, and I think I want to just start running down the line, like I said. What are some of the things? And, the first question I'm just going to ask you, I forgot to ask this. I got to go back to this. What did your wife, Sharon, think when you first said, hey, I want to run for Senate? I'm curious.
Catherine.
Oh, I'm sorry, Catherine. My bad.
It's all good.
Bad. I had it written down right, folks.
It's all good. Catherine. She was, what an angel. She is supportive. She knows this is important.
Right.
She knows, I think she thought I'd be good at it. And it turns out I think I'm doing well. I'm a pretty good candidate and I'm going to win and I'll be a good senator. She knows that. And she also knows the stakes. So she knows this is a save the country election. She knows it's important, but she's also smart and wise and therefore did not encourage me to do it, right? She's not like pushing me off the ledge to run for office, which I think makes her normal.
Right.
Because who would want this, right? Like you're just exposing your family to the media microscope and all the hateful things people say online.
And that's why I was asking, because, you're a business guy, you seem to be doing well, you probably live in a pretty good life, and you could probably continue to do that, right?
That's right. Truly, I don't need this job.
Right.
I don't like DC.
Right.
And it's, there's some family sacrifice. Although I like to put it in context too. It's like, yeah, I don't get to see my kids half the week now, and that's hard. And at the same time, I'm in a privileged position. I've done well in business. I'm running for the U.S. Senate. And think about the sacrifice that our military service members make, right? Many of whom are deployed overseas. They get to miss the birth of their child. It's like people make bigger, and some don't come home. Right. Okay, so people make much bigger sacrifices than I'm doing. That said, no, it's hard on my wife, and she's sacrificing more than I am. Right. That's for sure. But she knows it's important, and she's holding it down. Homeschooling the boys, and
there you go. The support of the spouse is really important.
Pretty soon we'll get the big tour bus, with our faces on it, and we'll just take them everywhere we go, and
that'll be fun.
It's a family project.
There you go. That'll be fun. So I've got an interesting question for you here. So I actually noticed you. This is where I first noticed you on one of your campaign ads, where you started out with a statement, "I believe Trump won," and that's a bold statement, and to be fair, it got my attention. Okay, and And you did explain further in your ad what you meant by that. But I was going to say, whether someone agrees with your statement or not, it certainly is controversial with many voters today. Why do you think it's best to lead with that statement?
Well, almost because it's controversial. Like, I knew it was going to be controversial. I know people disagree about this. You're apparently not supposed to notice all the borderline frauds, at least, or irregularities. And I think it was a shady election. Right. I don't know exactly what happened. I don't claim to know exactly how many legal and illegal votes Joe Biden got, but I saw a lot that was messed up, even in the run-up to the election, right? Which I focus on in this video. It's like big tech put its thumb on the scale. They censored the Hunter Biden laptop story. Sure. Pfizer knew that they were on track to get emergency FDA approval for the vaccine. They knew that before the election. You and I found out about it after the election. Right. I remember that. They sat on that info. So I think it was weird even before counting any ballots. I want to court that controversy. It's like, I will get out and I'm running a campaign where I say what I think. And not everybody's going to like that. Okay. And I'm not just going to run to the middle. I'm not just going to focus group everything. I'm going to be bold. I'm going to say what I think and let the chips fall where they may. Although I think we're in this moment in our history where people do not want politicians. They don't want fake, focus grouped, consultant-provided talking points. They want boldness. They want leadership. And sometimes that means sticking your neck out a little bit, even if you know that the media is just going to attack you. And they did. They attacked me.
Oh, I'm sure they did.
And the Lincoln Project.
I'm sure they did.
attacked me for that video.
And if you win the primary and the general, I'm sure they're going to attack you about it again.
It'll get 1,000 times worse. But I'm like, bring it on, because, look, I don't have all the answers, but directionally I know, like, I'm correct on these policies. Like, I'm a conservative. I'm running on the Trump 2016 sort of MAGA platform, building a strong middle class, resetting our foreign policy, stopping, we can't democratize the Middle East, but we can get serious about China. Law and order, build the wall, have a sane immigration policy where we know who's coming in. This stuff is popular. Right. Voter ID, like 60-70% of people are with us on this stuff. We just need bold messengers, bold communicators who can win elections and then go in and implement this agenda.
Right. And I think you're absolutely right, where people are tired of politicians, quote unquote.
Right. And I see, as soon as I started to run, I see why everybody looks and feels the same. It's because you get the consultants involved and everything's, and, God bless all the consultant class, but they'd put scripts in front of me and they want me to say, like, Joe Biden is taking away your freedoms and Kamala Harris, you know what I mean? And it's like, yeah, Joe Biden is taking away your freedoms. But I think somehow as soon as you act like a politician, you just become phony and fake. And I think people just tune that out.
So peel back the lid a bit, since you brought that up. That's interesting to me. So how are you running your campaign, so to speak?
I run my own social media.
Okay.
Literally, like, my campaign staff does not even have access to my Twitter account.
Wow.
Okay. I think everybody else is just the opposite.
I would think.
I think these guys don't even know how to tweet, but you can tell. It's because, like, Brnovich, who I'm running against, the Attorney General, he tweets like, now is so important not to abandon the Constitution and our history, and like all this stuff. And like, that's just, some consultant came up with that. And like, yeah, we shouldn't abandon the Constitution, but somehow he's just like out of touch. And this is obvious and everybody can see that. Right. Whereas I'm actually responding. I'm actually talking about like what happened in the Kyle Rittenhouse trial. I'm actually talking about what's actually happening at our southern border, right? In the Pima County Democratic Party, they attack me. They call me a racist every time I talk about a border crisis.
Right.
But it's just more immediate. It's more live. People can tell I'm a real person.
I like that. So it's more like a grassroots.
It's definitely more grassroots, but
Yeah,
then I think
yeah.
I'm also raising more money than
Right.
everybody else. So it's
Right. I know
I'm
you've been
trying to fire on all cylinders here, right?
Sure.
You can't just be a grassroots phenomenon, but
understood.
you can't. We really need a candidate who can do it all.
Yeah, I've seen polling. You've been coming up strong.
Up and to the right.
Yeah, and fundraising's been strong. That's all look good so far. You brought up immigration a couple times, so let's go there. On your website, you talk about building the wall, and you just mentioned it now. You mentioned, would you support a merit-based immigration policy?
Yeah, I mean, I do think we should have some legal immigration.
Right.
Although right now, I think we have too much.
Okay.
So we take more than 1 million legal immigrants every year.
Okay.
Obviously, the correct amount of illegal immigration is 0.
Right.
We know that.
Right.
But there's some proper amount of legal immigration. I think Congress ought to have a debate about what that number is. Who should come here? Why? What skills should they have? Where should they come from? That should be a debate.
Okay.
And I want the world's best and brightest. Absolutely, right?
Right.
If you're a rocket scientist or you're going to start some cool software company and you've had a demonstrated history of success in your native country, come on in. I suspect that's like 50,000 or 100,000 people a year,
Right.
not 1 million.
Well, Elon Musk is an immigrant.
We want
people
Elon
like him.
Musk's.
Exactly.
Absolutely.
Peter
And
Thiel.
There's a sense right now, absolutely. There's a sense right now that no one's really watching, right? These visa programs, like I've seen in Silicon Valley, the H-1B visa program.
Okay.
It's basically just corporate welfare for Google and Facebook at this point. They would much rather pay legions of coders from India to come over and pay them less than they'd have to pay a U.S. citizen in order to do those jobs. And then I think it lets people off the hook for having to actually train and educate our own people because we're just like, well, all these people from India know how to do these jobs. Let's import them. It's like, no, we have a hollowed out middle class in this country. So let's train our own people to do these jobs.
Okay. I'm going to ask a follow-up question on the next segment on the immigration because I agree with you, Blake. I think this is a very important issue, and it's near and dear to my heart. I'm first generation myself also. So, again, stay tuned to the next segment. We're going to talk to Blake Masters, candidate for U.S. Senate, in the next segment. So stay tuned. Don't miss it.
For more information on your personal bank, feel free to contact Ference at yourpersonalbank.com. Back to Your Personal Bank Show with Ference Toth.
Welcome back to the Your Personal Bank Show. And again, we have a very special guest today, Blake Masters, candidate for U.S. Senate for Arizona. And Blake has been sharing a lot of his background, some of his policies, which we're going to get into here in a minute. But again, if you did miss the previous segments, go to yourpersonalbank.com, our website, listen to the rest of this interview or any of the other shows, by the way. You can do that anytime you want. So again, Blake, welcome to the show.
Ference, thanks for having me.
All right, we were talking about immigration.
Yep.
And we were talking about merit-based immigration policies, and you mentioned, bringing in the best and the brightest, which I think most people completely agree with. And like you said, illegal immigration as little as possible. You mentioned, though, Congress having a discussion about who should come in the country or not. Do you think Congress has the capability of doing that, right?
Well, kind of not, honestly.
Right.
Like right now, Congress doesn't really do much of anything.
Right.
And they don't do much well. But
Yeah.
we do, if we want to have a functioning country, we do have to bring that competence back.
Right.
I mean, I think you get a few people like me in there, and we sort of change the way it works. And I'm not naive. I know it's going to be hard, but you can get a snowball effect and probably do a lot less in 1 year than people think, and a lot more in 5 or 6 years than people think. The U.S. Senate, right? I mean, it used to be the greatest debating floor body in the world.
Right.
And now it's laughable. I mean, things don't even go to the floor for a debate. Right. Leadership just decides what's happening and tells people to get in line if you want to have a good career. So it's go along to get along.
Right.
I think that's a big problem. But you got to consider the alternatives. Do you just want the president unilaterally making these decisions? That sort of probably violates constitutional design.
Right.
The executive probably already has way too much power. And the other alternative is just the administrative agencies, right? Some faceless, probably left-wing bureaucrat somewhere. And there's
Like
millions
Fauci.
of them. Yeah. Just get to decide.
Yeah.
And no, I think Congress should have a lot more control over what we did during the pandemic than Fauci. But over time, and the courts have let this happen, and it all works together in lockstep.
Right.
Congress has delegated its authority, I think unconstitutionally, to this whole fourth branch of government, right? The giant administrative state. And I think Congress needs to retake its power and legislate and actually be responsible.
If you get elected, you're one senator of 100. What could you do, do you think, to make that difference or start that process?
Yeah, I think, obviously part of the job is introducing the right bills and voting the right way, sort of the routine business. And look, when I get in, it'll be January 2023.
Right.
So we'll be playing defense. Unfortunately, Biden, Harris, whatever, is still going to be, in the White House.
Right.
And so we absolutely need to retake the White House in 2024. But it's initially about stopping the crazy agenda, right?
Okay.
Stopping things like the Build Back Better bill. Like we need to stop the Democrats from ruining the country.
Right.
But then we have to go on offense.
Okay.
And so I'm going to do things like introduce a digital Bill of Rights. Right.
Okay.
I think you own your data, and we can talk more about big tech later, but you own your data. Giant multinational corporations like Facebook and Google that are sucking up all this data about you, they shouldn't just get to own it and basically use it against you to serve advertisements to boast or to bolster their monopoly profits. So we need a digital Bill of Rights.
Okay.
Congress is way behind the curve on this.
Right.
I can write that legislation. I can introduce it. It's not going to pass in year one.
Right.
I don't have the votes.
Right.
But I will use the cultural power of that Senate seat, which I think most people don't use, to go on TV, to go everywhere I can, to go on Joe Rogan's show, right? And just shine the flashlight on people in the Democratic Party and Republican Party who are blocking this.
Right.
And the lobbyists and the corruption and all that, I'm excited to go in there and hack at the brush.
Okay.
And I think it's going to be really hard, but I intend to find out just how much one person can do.
Yeah, and being a businessman, you're used to getting things done, unlike a politician.
That's right. And we have some, I'm friendly with Senator Hawley, Senator Cotton. You get my friend J.D. Vance in there. He's running in Ohio. All of a sudden, you can imagine this new caucus, this new sort of sheriff in town.
Okay.
And we're not just going to go along with whatever leadership says. And we're going to push things like a digital Bill of Rights. We're going to push things like getting tough on Apple for just kowtowing to the Chinese Communist Party. Could be very interesting. And then all of a sudden we're starting a cultural shift and you get more people like us running for office, right? I think we're battling for the soul and the future of the Republican Party here.
Right.
And a lot of people want to go back to Paul Ryanism or Mitt Romneyism or something. And I think, no, we need to take seriously what Trump taught us. And I think that 2016 agenda is what we needed then. I think it's what we need now. And it's what I'll push in the U.S. Senate.
And I think it's you're absolutely right. I mean, certainly the Democratic Party has moved left in this last year.
So far, so fast.
Yeah, it's time to counteract that.
That's right.
Absolutely. So actually, I want to get into some more stuff, but you brought up, real quickly, you brought up the executive orders and bringing back some control, legislative control, Constitution, as it was intended in the Constitution. The other one I wanted to touch on was states' rights.
Yep.
I believe I think most people, the federal government has trampled all over states' rights. What could be done to bring that back more in line to the Constitution?
I think a lot of this you need strong governors. Okay. Right? You got what DeSantis is doing in Florida is really healthy. You need more of that, sort of the pull at the state level. I also think I can help meaningfully push this along at the federal level. Like I'm going to D.C., but I don't think D.C. should have unlimited power. I want to send as much power as possible back to the states.
Okay. Stay tuned in the next segment. We're going to talk about that a little farther because I didn't give Blake much chance to answer that one. But we'll jump right back in. Don't miss in the next segment because we're going to have some time to really dive in with Blake. So stay tuned.
For more information on your personal bank, feel free to contact Ference at yourpersonalbank.com. Back to Your Personal Bank Show with Ference Toth.
Welcome back to the Your Personal Bank Show, and we're wrapping this up today, but we have a very special guest, Blake Masters, candidate for U.S. Senate from Arizona. And Blake's been sharing a lot of his policies and ideas and his background. And again, I know folks listen to these, tune in and out. If you missed it, go to yourpersonalbank.com, listen to the rest of this interview or any of the other previous recorded shows. And again, Your Personal Bank, we're offering this as a educational public service because I invited Blake because I think this is important. Economic freedom is as important as any of our other freedoms. And since this is a financially focused show, where do you stand on fiscal responsibility, Blake?
Fiscal responsibility. If only we had some.
Exactly.
in Washington, D.C. I'm in favor of it.
Okay.
Yes. It's just so crazy. I remember when I was a kid and I was learning about the national debt and like how could you possibly spend more money than you have? Right, Dad? How does this make sense? Like we're not allowed to do that as a family, and if you do, you're in a lot of trouble. Apparently, the rules don't apply to Washington D.C., but no, it catches up with you. And now we're 30 trillion basically.
We're approaching that
in debt. And Republicans, I think, have gotten bad on this too.
It's been both. I think
the left drives it. I think the left drives it, and they put in place these programs that then it's unpopular to defund, but Republicans go along with it, and we can't do it anymore. Like I Like the government spends way too much money.
We've got current temporary debt ceiling increases. If you were in office, what would you do there?
I would not kick the can down the road. I think the Democrats are trying to hold us hostage, right? They're basically saying kick the can down the road so that we can pass the Build Back Better bill, right? Mm-hmm. Which is whether it's $3 trillion or $1.5 trillion, right? It's bad,
right?
Because it's the policy, and it's
right.
We all expect it to cost a lot more in the long run. I think we've been so irresponsible, and we need a little dose of reality. And I don't think Republicans should help them. I think we should force them to do whatever they're going to do with reconciliation, and we shouldn't lift an inch to help them ruin the country.
And what ideas do you have? What can we do to reduce the debt? Because, as you said, we can't keep kicking the can down the road. I talk about this a lot on our show. Eventually, we're going to have to pay the piper.
Right. I mean, I do think we need a balanced budget amendment. I'm not naive. Yeah. I think that's going to be really hard to get done.
Right.
But I think we need it.
Okay.
And, it's something that the left ought to support too.
Right.
It's like you have a certain amount of tax revenue, or maybe you're going to print a certain amount of money,
mm-hmm.
and then you can choose how to spend it. Congress should debate,
right.
Are these conservative programs or, liberal programs? Like, how should you actually spend the money? How much should the military get, et cetera? But everybody should agree that you can't spend more than you take in, right? And this unlimited money printing that we have.
Common sense would dictate that.
Common sense would dictate that. And
right.
honestly, we got to get back to it. And
right.
it's really hard to do because we've built up these bureaucracies and these programs and these entitlement programs. And it's really hard to unwind. But it breaks at some point. And so
right.
I think if it could either break suddenly and without warning, and maybe that's 3 years away or 30, but it's going to be really ugly, or we can really try to just it's bad, it's hard, but we can manage the chaos by grabbing the reins and saying, like, we're in a tough spot here. Mm-hmm. Decades of bad decisions have led us to this point.
Right.
And this may hurt a little bit, but here's how we guide us out of this thing and back towards what I think are the principles of economic freedom and markets that made this country great.
And what role do you think you as a senator or the Senate itself could have in all that?
I mean,
that direction.
Yeah, I think. Look, I'm young, but I've been paying attention, so I understand. And I have this economic libertarian background. Like, I'm coming at this from a certain view, a pro-market view.
Right.
But I know the history. I know the past few decades. I see how the damage has built up.
Right.
And so I don't know exactly what the stresses the financial system's going to face are in 2028. But I think you want people like me in the Senate who are eyes wide open, who know the scope of the challenges that we face, and who frankly are going to be smart and agile enough to help lead us out of it.
Right.
Because I think it's not just we beat the Democrats in 2022 and everything's all good.
Right.
And the best days of America are right ahead of us. I hope our best days are ahead of us.
Right.
But it's only going to be the case if we actually guide ourselves through, I think, some incredibly challenging times ahead. Like the $30 trillion in debt, it doesn't just go away.
Right.
You can't just snap your fingers and,
Well, I've shared on the show many times. I mean, we could find ourselves being like with austerity measures like Greece had a decade or so ago, for example, if we keep going down this path.
If you don't manage it well, it will be. It can be like that.
It'll be forced on us at some point.
Yep.
You've already covered a couple of the tough questions I was going to ask you, but I'll go ahead and just hit the third one. Is I talk to a lot of people all over the country, and when I talk to everyday Americans about what they think, their ideas of what would fix government, three things keep coming up: term limits.
Yep.
Balanced budget amendment, you brought up already, and just leave us alone. And what I mean by that is reduce the wasteful spending, bureaucracy, taxes, regulations, all of it. So I think I know where you stand on all those three things, but the one we haven't talked about is term limits. Where do you stand there?
I'm pro-term limits. I signed the term limits pledge.
Okay.
It commits me to introduce or join legislation to actually, force Congress to have term limits.
Okay.
Joe Biden, not everybody's watching this on YouTube. Some are just hearing it on radio.
Correct.
But if you could see my shining face here, I'm a young man. I'm 35 years old.
Okay.
And Joe Biden was younger than me when he was elected to the U.S. Senate.
Right.
In, I think, 1972, certainly the early 70s. And then he stayed for 48, 50 years and did nothing else with his life. And I think that's kind of disgusting, honestly. Right. And then it's like, congratulations, man, you're president. But you can't even string a sentence together. And it's really actually quite pathetic. Mm-hmm. We need term limits. And I don't want a career in D.C.
Right.
I'm going to solve a problem. I'll serve a few terms, but you will not see me as a 70-year-old man in D.C. Joe Biden's even older than that,
so
right?
You're going to commit to that. You've committed to that already.
Absolutely. we need term limits, and everyone says, well, it's going to be hard because why would Congress vote itself out of a job?
Right.
And that's true, but as the quality of governance declines here, and as we sort of probably get a changing of the guard in leadership. Whether McConnell gets another term, whether Pelosi hangs on for a few more years at some point.
Right.
They're not going to be in power anymore.
Right.
And I think the successors, especially my generation, millennials, like we know we need term limits. Like career politician is the worst thing you could be at this point.
There's a groundswell of support to that.
So again, 1 year from now, we'll probably not have term limits.
Right.
But 5 years from now, 10 years from now, I think if people like me get in there and push for this stuff, then we actually can.
Well, wasn't it Kennedy who said we do these things not because they're easy, but because they're hard? When you're talking about going to the moon, right?
That's right. So
there you go. All right, we're going to fire away a few other things we haven't quite hit on yet. Business closures with COVID. What would you do to protect business owners' civil rights?
Pass a law that says you can't close them. Can't close them. Like you said it earlier, economic freedoms are just as important as other freedoms.
Right.
Maybe you need to add something to the Constitution. That's really hard.
Right.
But if not, then if you can't do that, federal legislation. It's like people's right to economic livelihoods. And I actually think the courts have gutted this over time, ever since Lochner and some other cases, right? Like it's arbitrary, but the state, either federal or states, can just shut your business down for any so-called public health emergency. And I don't think they should be allowed to do that.
Right. That's, by the way, Blake, is what fired. I wasn't very political. And that was the linchpin for me.
Yep.
I'm an entrepreneur way back, and that just fired me up, and I've been involved since, getting more and more active. And
we got Fauci to say, got to close your business down, and sorry if your life savings goes up in smoke because we're really worried about this virus, and can't give the government that kind of power. It's very hard to get it back.
Which brings us up vaccine mandates. Obviously, I don't think you support them.
I do not.
And what would you do different?
I think we should just pass a federal law that's the opposite of Joe Biden's OSHA thing. I don't think any employer, at least past a certain size, should be able to require their employees to get vaccinated. Mm-hmm. I just don't think that should be allowed.
Right.
And
the courts seem to be agreeing on that, by the way, so far. Hopefully. All right, energy policy. Where are you at, like with shutting down pipelines and green energy support?
I think
like that.
One of the worst things the worst thing Joe Biden did on January 20th was to throw the border wide open, right? To just sign all those executive orders reversing Trump's policies. The second worst thing he did, but comparable, is shutting down pipelines.
Right.
He shut down Keystone.
Right.
And it's bad for the few thousand people it throws out of work. But it's really bad for the country.
Right.
And meanwhile, he's busy approving pipelines in Russia and Europe and stuff.
Right.
But it's really bad. I mean, all that capital, all that investment goes into a pipeline. And then if the president can just arbitrarily shut it down, what does that tell future investors? What does it tell future energy entrepreneurs about investing their time and sweat and capital in actually making energy? It's just arbitrary.
Right.
And you can't have an arbitrary government. It just messes up a predictable business environment. So I think that decision was horrible. We need a diverse portfolio of energy. It's like oil and gas are great. They're not going anywhere for a long time.
Right.
And fracking shows that technological development within oil and gas is possible. Mm-hmm. I think we should do more nuclear.
Okay.
And we haven't for a long time. I think that was bad PR that nuclear got, but actually nuclear is clean and safe. And to any left-winger that's really concerned about climate change, I say okay, your planet's heating up. You don't like that. So you must be in favor of nuclear power, right? And then their heads explode.
Right.
They're not. It's not consistent. But I think we should be pro-technology. The government should not pick winners and losers, but we should figure out how to have an innovative environment where energy entrepreneurs, whether they're oil, gas, solar, geothermal, or nuclear, can just do their thing.
Right.
Get new technology and get the market to take care of it.
I've even questioned this, and I'm not a constitutional scholar or an attorney, but I've questioned: does the president even have the right to shut down a pipeline, for example?
Well, probably strictly speaking, no. In a formal sense, no. But
I've seen
this is the might makes right thing, and if the Democrats just do that, if they take that power and we don't do anything about it, the conservatives are often very good at saying that's unconstitutional, Joe Biden, and it's if you're not going to do anything about it and actually make sure that there's consequences for violating the Constitution, then they'll just keep doing it.
What would you do different?
Well, I think first of all, we show him a big consequence by winning big in 2022.
Right.
Then he's a lame duck. We block his agenda. We throw him out in 2024. Mm-hmm. And I want to serve on the Judiciary Committee in the Senate. I will only vote for judges who have the right, strict understanding of the Constitution. Okay. And I do think there should be Do you remember the CDC eviction moratorium?
Yes. I railed on it big time.
Joe Biden's White House counsel told him this was unconstitutional.
Right.
And Joe Biden knew it, and he said...
He said it himself.
Biden
said it himself. It was
let's
probably
just do it, and it'll tie it up in courts.
Right.
And so sometimes, look, people are going to disagree, and you make a policy, and it's found unconstitutional, fine. But when you, as chief executive of the United States, knowingly and almost he bragged about it, violated the Constitution, I do think there should be consequences. I think, unlike the Trump-Ukraine phone call, that Biden behavior right there, that's impeachable, and I don't think he's fit to serve. I really don't. He's violating the Constitution and bragging about it. Like, what more do you need to say to say that he should be president?
Oath, right?
That's right. He violated that oath. There should be some consequences.
Right. I agree with you. Crime. How do we reduce crime in big cities? Democrat-run blue states.
You lock people up for doing bad stuff.
Yeah, but
this is so amazing. We know how to do this.
But how do we enforce it?
Homicides are up in Phoenix 50% this year.
So how do we enforce? The rules are on the books. How do we get them enforced again?
Well, you don't in San Francisco
and
in Los Angeles, where you have literally like Soros-backed DA candidates, who just don't believe in enforcing the law. Like if you slap handcuffs on people, then that might be racist or something, you know?
Right.
So those cities are gone. I think they're going to have to get real bad, a lot worse, before they get better. And my hope is that doesn't happen to Phoenix and Tucson. Although homicide rates in both are just skyrocketing. Right. And you talk to the actual police officers, you know, the city councils haven't actually voted to defund the police or anything quite as binary or dramatic. But you talk to those officers and they feel defunded. They know that the Tucson City Council, the Phoenix City Council,
they're not supported.
Super blue. They're not supported. And so you get this flywheel, right, where I think Phoenix loses 8 to 10 officers per month. It's really hard to attract new officers because of this national anti-police climate. So the quality goes down of the new entrants, and it's, you know, they're understaffed. It's tough. But if we don't recognize this as a huge cultural problem, things will get a lot worse. And the violent crime spike that we've seen will get worse.
Blake, how do you differ against the other candidates that are running?
I think, one, I'm not managed by consultants.
Okay.
I think that's really important. I'm a real person. I will answer any question. I will tell people what I think. I hope I sound different from a normal politician. If I don't, just tell me and I will go home.
Folks, I can tell you in studio, he doesn't feel like, my wife said, he's not what I expected. He seems like a real guy.
We get the feel guy. If you want to pretend, politician, actor man, you can vote for someone else. I don't have to. But I also think I'm younger, and that's going to be a superpower here. I can connect with different audiences, and I can articulate the correct conservative messages in new ways that appeal to everybody.
Awesome. Blake, thank you for coming. And we've had a great time here. If you want to support Blake,
go to blakemasters.com.
Awesome. Everybody, stay tuned to Your Personal Bank Show. And thank you, Blake, for coming.
Great to be with you. Thank you.
This show is designed to provide accurate and authoritative information. The presenter and guests on this program do not engage in legal, accounting, or tax advice. Professional advice regarding your situation should be sought if required. Products and riders may have limitations and may not be available in all states. Excessive unpaid loans may affect performance. Distributions may become taxable if not managed properly. Replacements may not be suitable for everyone. There may be charges when replacing coverage. Compare when considering a replacement. Dividend rates and line of credit rates may change. Contact yourpersonalbank.com for current rates.